Golden One Center in downtown Sacramento. Great place to see a Kings game or a concert or a special event like I participated in last night. I was playing music because that's what I've done a lot of my career is do a lot of DJ events, weddings, parties, special events. And so last night I showed up with my music system and played a lot of California music because that's what she was into. So it was like a soundtrack to the life of writer Joan Didion. And also mixed in some local bands just to give the presentation a local flavor since that's what the Sacramento Historical Society is all about. So they put this event on, and Joan Didion, just to let you know how important she was awarded a National Humanities Medal by President Obama in 2013. So getting a prestigious award like that cements her place in history. But she also had many other achievements before she died last December 2021. Um, she had a great life of just. She wrote several books that were published by major publishers like Simon and Schuster. She wrote for two major magazines. She wrote for Vogue in the 50s, and then in the late 60s, she wrote for Life. She didn't seem to like that as much, according to what she said on a Charlie Rose interview once. So she moved back to New York. So what it was she grew up in Sacramento, although she was part of a military family that moved around a lot. So she was born in Sac in 1934, but then she moved around and then came back like in the early to mid 40s and attended school, and she eventually graduated from McClatchy High. And I understand from a Sac City College teacher named Mark that I met last night. He teaches art at Sac City College. He said that Joan attended at least one semester at Sac City College before going to UC Berkeley, where she graduated in 1956. And from there, she immediately moved to New York. She won a contest with Vogue magazine, and so she got a job out of that. And she wrote for them for a while and then moved to LA in 1965 with her husband, John Dunne. And from there, she became kind of a counterculture icon. She knew a lot of those people of that period, and she knew the musicians, hanging out in the Laurel Canyon area. Of course, a lot of the LA musicians were living in that area during the 60s and 70s, and probably after that. She knew the Doors. That's another thing that automatically puts her in the history books. She attended their recording session of Waiting for the Sun in 1968 and then wrote about what she witnessed. And she also moved to Malibu, and that's where she met other superstars. And she and her husband wrote the screenplay to the famous 1976 film A Star is Born. Just to give you an idea of some of her writing, her first major book was called Slouching Towards Bethlehem in 1968. And that was kind of about the hippie culture of the California scene in the 1960s. 1979, she wrote a book with a title that she borrowed from her favorite band, or one of her favorite bands, the Beatles, and that book was called The White Album. That was about the 60s. And Salvador was a book she wrote in 1983. That was about El Salvador and the U.S. kind of participation, helping out, overthrow their government. Some call it gonzo journalism, where you're like moving away from traditional structure, kind of like how the Beatles broke the whole structure of songwriting, like traditional songwriting or music making. They just broke the rules and came up with new stuff. But at the same time, they kind of had foundations in certain areas of tradition mixed with innovation so that it came out as this explosive sound. Um, I think her biggest achievement, beyond writing the screenplay for A Star Is Born in the blockbuster film in 1976, I think it was the fact that she wrote for major publishers like Simon and Schuster, and she wrote several books that they published. One was called Miami, and that was about how Cuban refugees had formed their own culture in Miami, and it's all about like why they were driven out of Cuba. Um, Bay of Pigs from the early '60s and all that stuff. Um, so politics was intertwined in her writing, but it wasn't. I don't think it was the reason she was a writer. Like, it was unclear where she stood politically sometimes. Like, she told Charlie Rose in a 1996 TV interview that she was a registered Democrat but didn't really believe in the party anymore. Like, she just didn't go along with. She thought Republicans and Democrats were kind of the same. Not. She did write some stuff about California's water resources that was pretty political in the sense that she pointed out that our water systems weren't handled too well back in the '60s, and who knows, she may have helped make it better. But getting back to Joan and last night, she's such an incredible figure in history that they made a statue, a sculpture of her, and that was the reason for the big event last night, the unveiling of the Joan Didion statue. So, you know, I just think it was great that people showed up for this. Hundreds of people showed up for it, and it was like a refreshing reflection on local history. Even though she left town, that's what normally happens. Molly Ringwald leaves town and becomes a superstar. You could say that. Spiral Staircase, they had that hit in 1969 called More Today Than Yesterday. And they had that hit after they left Sacramento and moved to LA. Same with a group called Fanny. Have you ever heard of them? They were the first female, like all female band signed to a major label to put out a rock album in 1969. Okay, they were from Sacramento, but they didn't become signed till after they left and moved to LA. Okay, so Fanny's a good group to look up if you're a local history enthusiast, like I am. I love studying local history, and that's why I went to this event. My friend Carla, who is a member of the Sacramento Historical Society, she's the one who invited me to come play music. And again, I had a great time, met some cool people, and it was a great reflection on the fact that Sacramento has had several notable figures, but again, they usually become notable after they leave town. So we got to work on that. Cake, a band that I promoted when I was program director at Quad in Sacramento, was an alternative station. I'm the one who gave them lots of initial airplay that got their career going. They were already touring and doing shows and stuff and really good at it. That's why I started playing them. I saw their concert and I was blown away by it because they were, getting the crowd to sing along with their songs. And so they eventually, after I gave them lots of airplay in Sacramento, they started getting played around the country and then sold millions of albums. So Cake is another band you want to check if you're trying to research local history. But I could give you a list of many others. And getting back to Joan Didion, last night to celebrate her life, some notable speakers made speeches at the event, and then they showed short video clips of Joan, and kind of like mini documentaries on a big screen. So some of the speakers were, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis, who just got reelected earlier in the week. She's been lieutenant governor for 4 years under Gavin Newsom, and they both got reelected. And also, Mayor Darrel Steinberg was there. And they also showed a video of ex-governor Jerry Brown, who was friends with Joan Didion, and he had some nice things to say about her. So overall, it was an incredible event. I'm so glad they asked me to play music there for the crowd before the presentation. And it was wonderful seeing that Sacramento, and specifically the Sacramento Historical Society, supports local history. And you can find out more about this organization by going to their website at sachistoricalsociety.org.